Hey guys, welcome back. Episode 45. We're going to talk about a current problem we've been seeing over the last 2 weeks, which is a lack of understanding about how to organise yourself from a shoulder to an overhead position. We've had a lot of guys who actually have enough rotational range of movement to perform the movement correctly, but seem to be failing in how they set up and execute. The bar path seems to be a problem. We talk a lot with our athletes about the necessity, if you're going to be an athlete, about having positional strength and positional awareness, because you can't transition through a position unless you understand that particular position really well and you know how to stabilize yourself in that position. So this is where we see a lot of problems related to doing lots of jerks, lots of kipping movements without actually focusing on strict movement patterns as well. We seem to be a lot of guys with windows in their understanding about how to organise through full ranges of movement. And we're going to talk about a little drill that we've been working on with a couple of clients, and we've seen some really quick results. So hopefully they'll give you the same benefits. The problem that we've been seeing is particularly pertinent with military pressing and push pressing. And what we're seeing is this. We're seeing that people can get set up into a relatively good position to start with, and then as they initiate their pressing movement, even though they are controlling their midline position very well, they tend to be losing the lift on the initial part of the press or on the transition. So as they start to press, they start to develop a position which looks relative to this, which is immediately going to cause a load of problems. Their elbows start to drift outside the line of their wrists. Okay, and the forearm angle becomes more acute. This is an immediate problem for us because what we're seeing is the moment your elbow flares, and we see this with the bench press as well, this flared bench press posture, is the moment that happens, of course, you are losing the ability to create rotational, external rotation force in your shoulder and use some of your primary stabilizers to control the load. What you might do is you might find some better range of movement temporarily in that position, which allows you to get to a sticky spot, but it does dehinge you and takes away a lot of your kind of output and your pressure and your power from the lift. So it's a bit of a disaster really. What we're finding is this: our athletes are transitioning, they're going wide, they're staying wide. As a result of that, they finish off their lift in this position. When they re-establish the descent, they also follow the last path they were on, which is the same one. They come down in the same fashion and they finish off in what looks quite nice. This is a big problem, of course, because you're basically pressing overhead in a position of relative internal rotation, which is not going to be conducive to allowing you to use the right musculature, but also cause some impingement issues around your neck, your rib and your shoulder. So we've seen a lot of problems related to that, which have gone away almost immediately when we've set up better and executed better. The path that we're interested in talking with our guys about is being able, as you start to initiate the movement, is to almost think about this elbows coming together type sensation. They don't actually come together all the way because that would be too much, but we're just finding that we're holding that position allows us to maintain this much more kind of vertical forearm looking posture. When we get to the top position, we often see this head thrust through, which we'll discuss a different day, which you don't like also. And as we re-initiate descent from the top, we want to, first of all, encourage a slight elbow together sensation. So an external rotation moment where you squeeze the elbows and you start the descent to encourage the bar path to come back down in this position, which is much more conducive to using external rotation. So we are basically talking about having a vertical forearm throughout the movement, and that will be a reference for how much external rotation you're providing or producing at any given moment. The two drills that we've given our patients to think about here, we've called the press and squeeze for one, and we've got a kettlebell drill for the second. The first one, the press and squeeze one, is quite simply with a dowel or PVC pipe. We're getting our athletes into the starting positions for their presses, and we're getting them to actively squeeze and isometrically hold external rotation. So we're getting them in start position, they're going to squeeze, 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 overdoing the external rotation necessity, hold, 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 relax off, repeat again, squeeze, 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 squeeze. My shoulders are set, they aren't kind of drifting forwards into this broken, horrible position. We're staying nice and engaged, and we relax off. We then transition through the movement in stages. We're going to go to the nose level, and we're going to squeeze, 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 and relax out. Squeeze, 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 squeeze. Relax out. Squeeze, 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 squeeze. Relax out. We go into hairline. We're squeeze, 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 squeeze in, and repeat. Almost full position. Squeeze, 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 squeeze. Full position. Squeeze the shoulder blades in and down. Then what we do is, as we initiate the descent, we do the same thing. We come down, squeeze in, squeeze in, squeeze in, transition back, squeeze, 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 and so forth. This, it's quite taxing. Really wakes up those shoulders. And then what we encourage immediately is for our athletes to rehearse that bar path where there's much more kind of a vertical forearm path. And what it does is it wakes up the stuff that's necessary and reminds them they have a job to do, not just at the beginning or at the end, but during the most important phase, which is also a transitional component through range. Number one. Number two is a bit more interesting. We're going to use a loaded kettlebell. Now, there's no way in the world, if you hold the kettlebell inverted, that you can do that in a poor position. The position relative that we talked about with the elbow flayed, it's almost impossible to hold this kettlebell upright in the really, really bad position. It'll automatically pull you into a stable position in the scapular plane, which will utilize your kind of force couplets in your shoulder and allow you to access external rotation. Simple reason for that is you're much more powerful, you're much more safe when you're doing it that way. When we have a bar with two hands, we tend to forget that, or the stimulus gets changed because of the ability to create torque off the bar. What you're going to do is you're going to set yourself up, and you're going to do some holds just in the bottom position first. And you're going to hold, transition, hold, transition, hold, transition, hold, back down and hold, back down and hold, back down and hold, and relax. This is a 16 kilo kettlebell. You can pick your kettlebell to suit yourself. It's really tough. You can't go into a bad position with the kettlebell because your shoulder will find the position which gives you the most stability, which is probably just in this scapular plane, nice and compacted with your forearms vertical. Have a go at this drill, guys. Try the squeeze and press one first, try the kettlebell 1 second, and then go back to your pressing and try and rehearse those messages that you try to ingrain. Solving loads of problems for our overhead athletes. We're seeing loads of issues going away. Give it a go, guys. Let us know what you think. As always, comments are always welcome.